again, and welcome to another session with neighbors and friends. We have been interviewing people and talking about the rights, the civil rights and religious rights, spelled R-I-T-E-S, for gay and lesbian people who are in our communities and in our families. Today's guest is Rabbi Jeff Portman, and you are from the local synagogue.
I'm from Agudas Achim,
And
right on the corner of Johnson and Washington streets.
right. And for people to find that easy, it's just a little bit east of Pioneer Food Store.
Right, exactly.
And
My favorite place for coffee.
right. And we want to include our Jewish friends in our audience to look at how people are included in every community and nearly every family in one generation or another.
Mm-hmm.
Some great aunt, some niece, if not a brother or a sister. And we'd also like to point out the long history that our Jewish people have in the state of Iowa. In researching on the internet for this program, I noticed that back in the early 1800s, check it here, did I leave that here or take it back? Here we are. In 1833, we had a Jewish gentleman, Alexander Levi, who settled in Dubuque because that was one of the first places people could cross the Mississippi River. And there's a whole lot of important dates here. In 1859, there was a United States Hebrew Association of Iowa City. And in 1873, Moses Bloom was elected mayor of Iowa City. And later, he was elected to the state senate and played a very important role in efforts to get a standing appropriation for the State University of Iowa. And so we know that our Jewish friends and neighbors have been an important part of our community all the way through. Not only that, but in 1904, you had Mary Grove Crowner, hired by the University of Iowa as an instructor in the English department, and she was probably the first Jewish faculty member at the university. Any other points you'd like to bring out about the history of?
Well, the synagogue is very old. It was Articles of Incorporation, as this history states, was put together in 1916, but the congregation was actually in existence in the late 1800s, maybe 1890s, something or another. And it's been its present location since 1954. It used to be housed in a house where the post office is now, in one of those small lots right there, and also had services in people's homes. But its permanent home is since the mid-1950s as the present location. And the synagogue is presently affiliated with both the conservative and reform movements. We're one of maybe a dozen or so congregations that has these dual affiliation because we are too small to have two congregations in Iowa City.
Right.
Plus, I don't like competition.
And there's a certain group that has an interpretation in one way and some slightly different, but both groups meet together.
Well, it's only actually one synagogue, and we just made this co-affiliation because we had members coming from outside of Iowa City, which were members of one or the other, and we felt we could better serve them if we sent our kids and had education materials and all kinds of other materials coming from both streams of Judaism.
Right.
So it just makes sense for us anyway.
Right, just to work together.
To have.
Right. And then you came to Iowa City yourself in
1974.
1974.
Right.
And you have been with us ever since.
They can't get rid of me, I guess. I've been here, yeah.
They must like you.
I don't know.
They must like you.
It's a good town. Good town. So it's strictly a university congregation. If the university were not here, I'm not so sure we would survive as a functioning congregation with rabbi in the school and things like that. But the university is our major employer
Right.
of most of our members. Not all, but most.
Right. But not only was one of your forefathers instrumental in getting the university started, but you have many faculty members today.
Oh, yeah. The great bulk of our congregation are the faculty and staff and physicians and staff at the university.
Right. Many people from the School of Medicine,
Mm-hmm.
many people from the School of Religion as well.
Yeah, all across the university.
Right. I think that
When the university does hiring, we do well. When they've cut back a little bit, we stay the same.
right. But it says here in the notes I looked up when I was researching that in 1926 the School of Religion was opened, and with Dr. Maurice Fabridge as the Jewish chair. And as such, he became the Hillel director, which is your student group.
Right.
And so you have had members, important members on faculty, both in the School of Religion and the School of Medicine, and other departments as well.
Mm-hmm. A couple presidents here and there, too. The university were Jewish, members of our congregation.
Okay. Yeah. But any people want to know about the history, just Google it. And
We'll have to keep it up to date then.
But-
We'll have to keep it up to date then.
yeah, right. But it says here you were a graduate of HUC,
Yeah,
which
Hebrew
is
Union College, which is in Cincinnati.
in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And
I finished there in '73, spent a year in Israel, and I came here.
so we've had you your whole career practically.
Right.
Well, I was, because the topic of Neighbors and Friends is to discuss civil rights for 100% of the population. I Googled the gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender people within Judaism,
Mm-hmm.
and I came up with a site called Jewish Mosaic.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that site, but
But when I asked you if you had a Jewish group, I think you told me the same thing that the pastor we had on a previous session, that everybody's just a member.
yeah, we don't ask people's sexual orientation. We don't ask, too many personal things about them. If they want to be members, they want to come. Good.
Good, right. And that's what the
I
congregation.
mean, I do know people. I'm sure I don't know about everybody, but I do know people who are gay or lesbian. But that doesn't really enter into any.
It's not an off-putting thing. It's just part of humanity,
Right. They're just people like anybody else.
right? And that's the purpose of the program, to help people out there who think that gay and lesbian, transgender people are all that different, even though they go to jobs. A ton of them are doctors.
Yeah,
Jay.
where the movements would differ is, I think there's the three major movements in Judaism: Orthodox, Conservative, Reform. And I would think, and I would hope, that all congregations will be open and affirming and letting people participate as much as they want or not participate as much as they want. And where the movements might differ is what positions can gays and lesbians become rabbis in their respective movements. And can their rabbis officiate at unity ceremonies, marriage ceremonies, affirming ceremonies, whatever you want to call these ceremonies,
Right.
which would link two lesbians or two gays. The Reform movement, about 36 years ago, I remember because it was just a year before I was ordained, I believe, 36 years ago, said that women can become rabbis. And then about maybe a dozen years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, I'm not sure which, said that men and women who are gay lesbians can become rabbis. So it wasn't a major, I wasn't part of it, they didn't ask me, but it didn't seem to be a major dispute within the Reform movement. The conservative movement just allowed women to become rabbis maybe 20 years ago, and just, I think, a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, after much controversy, allowed men and women who are lesbian or gays to become rabbis within their movement.
Right.
And the Orthodox movement has not gone that way yet. So someone who is openly, I'm sure there are, well, women can't become rabbis in the Orthodox movement. I'm sure there are gay men rabbis, but they're in the closet still.
Right.
I don't know of any, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
In terms of affirming ceremonies, the Orthodox don't even talk about with them. That's just not in their purview. The conservative movement, not yet. I'm saying yet because they've taken the step allowing men and women to become rabbis. They're gay and lesbians, so I think the next step would be allow affirmation ceremonies. And Reform movement just recently, the professional organization that most Reform rabbis belong to, said that their rabbis have their support if they want to officiate at a ceremony between two gays, two lesbians, wherever you want to,
Right.
how you want to term that. And it's up to each individual rabbi and their congregation where they want to do that. So if I were asked and I said yes, and I had to convince my congregation, I would have the backing of my professional movement to do that.
Right. So over the years, it's been a growing process of learning to know the whole segment of society, learning to realize differences are not that huge, and
To me, it's a no-brainer.
yeah,
It's just a matter of human rights. We accept people who are, different skin pigmentation in our congregation, people who, have one leg, two legs, one eye, two eyes. I mean, people are people. I don't know what,
Right.
I actually don't understand the big deal
right,
about who can come in, who can't come in. It's just a matter of human decency and rights to say, okay.
right.
This thing in California is very disturbing.
Very disturbing.
Very disturbing. I was shocked when I saw that come. I think there was, I don't know the history about how that proposition got passed and who pushed it. I just don't, I'm ignorant of that, but I was just, with the election of Barack Obama on one side and that proposition on the other side, the two don't seem to mesh.
Don't seem, no. I think it's fair on the part of a huge, what would be the ultra-conservative within the Christian group. A terrible fear and a terrible lack of knowledge. A terrible lack of understanding, terrible lack of compassion, and a terrible lack of...
There's so much loneliness in this world and so much troubles and things like that. When two people love each other, it should be occasion for society to rejoice and say, good
Right.
God, that's great. Let's celebrate that.
Right.
Rather than saying, you can't fall in love with that person. That's just not right.
Not that way. And within my own background, which is from the Christian group, there's so much negativity and twisting of little pieces of scripture.
Yeah, I'm speaking from as a liberal Reform rabbi, so I'm not speaking for my colleagues in the Orthodox conservative. Every religious group, whether it be Christians, Muslims, Jews, every religious group has what I call problematic text. And for a religion to stay current, I think, they have to take those problematic texts and somehow finesse their way around those texts. Certainly, Jews have problematic texts, and I regard that text about homosexuality as one of such texts.
Mm-hmm.
The other parts of the Bible we don't do. We don't sacrifice animals anymore. I'd have a job for one thing. I don't want that to happen. But Jews haven't done that for 2,000 years. We don't take rebellious children and take them to the other side. If they don't obey their kids, we're going to stone them to death, although I've been tempted at times to take some of my unruly kids in my religious school out to do that. But there are parts of the Bible which are no longer applicable. And what I hate about these right-wing people is they take one text out. You don't see them going, there's a commandment in the Bible, you should not mix linen and wool. you don't see we don't have factories here in Iowa City testing your clothes to see if it has this improper mixture.
Right.
We don't have that. So they just wrest this one line out and say, oh, this has got to be, this is the only thing that matters. To me, it's just, they're living in the wrong century.
And such a misuse of
It's an excuse to abuse somebody.
right.
I think when anybody uses scripture to denigrate someone's humanness, they are not acting godly. The Bible says, "You shall be holy because I am holy," says God. And that is the overarching thing. In fact, the Talmud says this, you can't find every rule in the Bible addressed, every issue addressed. And so the overwhelming rule is, "You shall be holy." And that trumps everything.
Right.
So for someone to say, to denigrate somebody for whatever reason, means they are transgressing the most fundamental rule of the Bible.
Right. And my effort with this program has been to bring some light on the misuse that we hear from television evangelists and we hear from some pulpits. I was just astounded in the research I was doing on some of the websites of this Jewish Mosaic group. I ran across past the archive a lot of articles or sermons or what of presentations.
Right.
The archive that and one was addressing Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, lo and behold, as someone who has heard that twisted against a small part of humanity, this whole thing on the Jewish Mosaic was about how this spoke about inhospitality toward the stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't say anything about
Right.
sexuality.
Right.
It was the whole thing was about inhospitality to the stranger in their midst. And I was just delighted.
In fact, in the Bible, Abraham argues with God about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes.
And Abraham doesn't even know the reason why they were evil.
No.
But Abraham argues with him, and God sort of won the argument.
Yeah.
But so it's not a slam dunk situation, even in the Bible.
No.
So no matter how you interpret it.
Right. But the whole issue was the inhospitality.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with whether or not one gay man loved another gay man.
Right.
Because there was no love in that attempted rape in there.
No.
And the whole thing was inhospitality. But, I mean, I was just...
Right. You can make a case that this shows that, you should not forcibly have relations with someone you don't love.
Right.
Love is supposed to be the governing part of this.
Absolutely. So anyway, I was simply delighted when I was in college, I so enjoyed my first philosophy course that I ended up with a double major, the English, which I intended to be a teacher, and the philosophy, because it just thrilled me and excited my capacity to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I also took a minor in religion,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the professors took us over to Sioux City
Mm-hmm.
to a Jewish synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the rabbi had all of us college students sitting there, and he said, take the book out of the pew ahead of you. And he said, turn to page so-and-so. And I want you to read this prayer with me. And then he looked up at us and kind of laughed and said, this will not make you Jewish. So we were just being exposed to faith as faith itself being a universal desire of the heart.
I think a lot of this anti-gay stuff is from a lack of exposure lack of education. People are always afraid of something they don't know. I find it when people come to Iowa City, if they small Iowa towns, they've never met a black person before. They've never met a Jewish person before. They've never met a Muslim before. They've never seen anybody they know to be gay or lesbian. And it's the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more people have exposure to people of other cultures and say, these people are people. That's
Right.
all. They're just people. That a lot of that can be dispelled, but it takes a lot of hard work to do
Right.
that.
And it's part
That's
of,
why I think it was momentous, earth-shattering that Barack Obama became elected. I think that just shattered a lot of myths in America, and that juxtaposed with the proposition in California just didn't gel with me. But I think there's just more work to be done.
right. More maturing, more understanding,
Right,
and to get over the fear of the other,
right,
and not use that fear element as a wedge.
right.
Right.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So we will, at the end of the program, put on websites, and as I said, we'll put on your address here in town. We'll put on for the Jewish people in our listening audience.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have this Jewish mosaic.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have it there, but the Reform movement. I think you have one of their
I
Torah
have
commentaries there has a link
Yes, they had a link to the
to
reform
their
and,
decision of ordaining men and women, gay men and women as rabbis, as well as a link affirming their support of rabbis who will perform those kinds of marriages.
Right. Uh-huh.
So that's a valuable link, which I think you have
Right.
there.
Because I don't know just which stack it's in here, but it did link to explain the reform and the conservative
Right.
and the orthodox and the
There's a Reconstructionist movement as well, and they
Reconstructionist.
also have, I believe, gay and lesbian rabbis.
I believe.
I'm not sure.
Right. And I believe there is a synagogue out in at least one in California that was formed by a lesbian rabbi,
Mm-hmm.
and her whole ministry is
Mhm.
to those otherwise unaccepted people, to give them a place where they're accepted.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that kind of synagogue. I understand why they formed that congregation, because other people wouldn't accept them. But most gays and lesbians I know, when they go to the synagogue, they don't want their sexual identity to be the focus of their synagogue attendance.
Absolutely.
They want to pray like everybody else prays. They want to go to programs like everybody else goes.
Right.
And when you go to, I've never been to it, so I can't say firsthand, when they go to the synagogue, they don't want the whole being of existence to be their sexual identity.
Right. They want to be able to worship with their brothers and sisters, their mothers
Exactly,
and fathers.
exactly. So I have mixed feelings about, I wish they would find a congregation that would be hospitable to them, and they can just be one of the folk instead of
Right. And
single-issued.
right. I
synagogue.
have the same feeling basically when I talk about rights within the Christian church. Why don't you just go join a church that's
Mhm.
based on being gay? But people want to worship
Right,
with their siblings, with their parents,
exactly.
with their cousins, with their
Right.
whole community.
Churches and synagogues and mosques should be open to all peoples.
Excellent.
That's, otherwise they're not being a good synagogue, church, mosque, whatever.
That's so that's wonderful to hear you say that. There will come a day when gays and lesbians of whatever faith background do not feel it necessary to make just a place where they are welcome, because
Right,
they'll be welcome all over.
right.
And that's the purpose of the program.
Good, good. Well,
Now you have several groups and meetings within your church. You have a time when you can help people learn to speak Hebrew and read Hebrew.
we have actually a program which for kids we have a Hebrew school. It meets Monday and Wednesday afternoons after regular school from 4 to 6 o'clock. And the kids usually start when they're 7 years old. And then when they get to be 12 years old, they go into my class where they stay for the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. Bar mitzvah is for boys, bat mitzvah for girls. And then, so they, full curriculum is about 5 or 6 years in the Hebrew school. And then they also go to Sunday school on Sundays. And we have a preschool through confirmation, which goes to 10th grade. Plus, we have a series of adult education programs which mostly meet on Saturdays and Sundays. So, and we partner with the Jewish students there in Hillel. We do a lot of things cooperatively with them.
Okay. And that's a campus-led group? Or
Right, it's a campus-led group on the corner of Mark and Dubuque, right across the street from Gloria Day Lutheran Church.
Okay.
And they have Jerry Sorokin is a full-time Hillel director there, and we do a lot of things together.
Okay. And
he would say the same thing about this topic.
right, that's good. That's good. We might have him on sometime.
Sure.
My group that I work with
Mhm.
in the Senior Center television studio
Mm-hmm.
have told me, well, Elsie, it's interesting that we talk about this topic with clergymen and the rabbi and scholars, but other scholars than the religiously trained scholars, but we want to see some gay men on there and some lesbians. So I joked with them and I said, okay, one of these months we will have the gay man of the month or the lesbian of the month. And there are a number of couples from Iowa City
Mm-hmm.
who have gone to California or Canada
Mm-hmm.
to have the sacred rites that they're not able to find here in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Though we hope to have that soon in Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
because Iowa has been first in so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa was among the first states to do away with the misogyny laws
Mhm.
that outlawed cross-racial marriage, or indeed that outlawed black people the right to get married because they were only 3/5 of a person according to the Constitution
Right.
at one time.
Right.
So there has been a lot of growing in America, and I appreciate your joining
You're
our
welcome.
group.
I enjoyed being with you. Thank you.
I've enjoyed the insights that you have given us, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Rabbi Jeff Portman from the Agudas, Achim, the synagogue right down here on Washington Street, the corner of Washington and
Johnson.
Johnson. And we are people of faith, and we are open-minded adult people.
Right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.